Welcome everybody to the second workshop in our Ingenuity on the Edge series, which is organised by Digital Design and Development at NIC. Today we are very pleased to welcome Jen Rollins from the Update Company. Woo! Jen, besides being an all-round awesome human being, also has 20 years of digital marketing and business development experience. She's worked with industries from retailers and recruitment to banking to manufacturing and tourism, with target markets all over the world. And I've had the pleasure of working with Jen on a few projects, and she really knows how to get results. She knows how to get conversions, she knows how to get the most out of your advertising budget. And in this workshop, Jen will take you through the basics of digital advertising, and she'll go into more detail on how to attract and target leads, how to figure out your conversion strategy, and how to make sure that it's working. So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that North Island College campuses are on the traditional and unceded territories of the combined 35 First Nations of the New Shelnuith, Kwakwaka'wakw, and Coast Salish traditions. So Jen, my dear,
thanks,
over to you.
So I wanted to talk a little bit what you can expect today. I've made some assumptions moving through this. One is that you'll be working with multiple clients. So the reality is maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be doing this for yourself, or maybe you'll just have one client. The processes and everything that I talk about are still applicable. I'm just using language coming from the position of having multiple clients or coming from a firm type perspective. And so I would just, while you're learning, or while you're taking it in or taking notes, just keep that in mind. But yeah, the processes, the tips, and the tricks will remain the same. Yeah, so jump into it. Or yeah, so best case scenario, you'll be like, I'm gonna put an ad together and it's gonna be so good. Worst case scenario, you can just like talk to people randomly about closed captioning rates or conversion rates, and you know, impress others. They probably won't know what you're talking about. It'll look impressive. So here's a little video that I have of what my kids think I do for a living. What are you doing?
Yeah, what?
Are you being mommy?
Yeah.
What else does mommy do?
Take pictures.
What else does mommy do when she works, Lovey?
Do homework.
Yeah. What else does she do?
What's your password? She drink coffee and drink tea.
So mommy just drinks coffee, drinks tea, and posts pictures? Yeah. That's mommy's job, huh? So that video is actually from 2016, so it's about 5 years old. My kids at that time were probably, I think, 3 and 7. Now they're 9 and 13, and they think it's still accurate, that I just work on the internet, and they're not wrong. So it gives you an example of what they think I do for a living. So I just post pictures, drink coffee, tea. Interesting piece here though, and if you guys wouldn't mind adding your comments or into the chat for Claire, but why do you think I took the time to caption that video? Anyone?
For accessibility, to be inclusive.
Accessibility is huge. You want to make sure that everyone can read it. The second reason, and the most important reason, is that 80% of people on social media watch videos without sound. And that's, I had to do some research into this, because I had a client that was like, I don't think that we should take the time to close caption this. Or, you know, they just look at it from a place of, oh, YouTube will close caption it themselves, that type of thing. But yeah, 80% of people consume video without sound. So how do you convey your message to them, and how do you bring that power and energy that you would normally get from the music that you select or for the words that you choose? So the only thing that you have that you can grab someone's attention with now is going to be words. So it's super, super, super important to close caption anything. Even if you're doing an ad and you're looking at 15 to 30 seconds, that video is 35 seconds, you'll always want to make sure that you caption it. So if there's one thing that you're learning from this today, well, you'll learn a lot, but I hope anyway. But make sure that you're closed captioning your videos. Okay, this is what my dad thinks I do. He thinks I work on the Facebooks, and I know about the internet and computers and stuff. Accurate, kind of, but it's just, you know, I make jokes about my dad's amazing. He's a mechanic, and he can't imagine sitting at a computer all day working, just like I can't imagine like laying underneath a car, getting all greasy and, I don't know, oily. But we can appreciate each other's talents. So in a lot of cases, most of my clients don't know what I do either. They're just like, she does the magic, which brings the leads, and they don't need to know really, right? They just need to know that what I do gets results, and my dad knows I'm good at my job, and he can trust that, even though he doesn't really understand what I do. Yeah, he's also like the raddest man on the human on the earth. There we go. And then this is what society thinks I do. So they're just like, yeah, living the digital nomad life. You just put on a business suit, you head to the beach, and you work on your killer conversion path. Just make sure that you have like super huge amounts of data for that heinous tethering costs. But yeah, there seems to be a perception that someone works on the internet and they just sit on the beach all day. It's probably not. But this is what I actually do, is this. Literally this. My days are nonstop video calls, calls with clients, calls with my team, contractors, vendors. And although I have the ability to be a digital nomad, maybe without the business suit in the last slide, and I can work anywhere, and I have before. Like I went to see Austin City Limits, went to a huge music festival and watched Lizzo, and was like working at night and watching huge bands during the day, so Childish Gambino. Like it is to a degree living the dream, but welcome to Corona. So mostly I just stay home these days, but hopefully I'll be able to travel soon. But it's just the idea of you know, people think that this job or this digital nomad life is so glamorous, but it's really just me sitting on Zoom calls. All right, so this is me, Jen Rollins. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently the director of operations, the director of lead generation, and the director of fun at the Update Company. We're a team, I think we're just like 10 of us out of Cumberland. Here on the island. I was born and raised in Edmonton and moved here in 2017. I didn't know a single soul. I just love this area and knew that I wanted to raise my daughters by the ocean. And this place checked all the boxes for me. I came in as an entrepreneur, and Craig and Nick from the Update Company wined and dined me for months before I finally said that I would come work here. And it's been 3 years since, so, and I actually just became a partner, so part owner in November, so I'm really excited about that. So what I'm bringing with me is 20 years of experience, as Claire said. Maybe some of this gray hair that you're probably seeing is more of an indication of my age and experience, but it's pretty cool. I've worked from everything from big, huge, or like little tiny, you know, small budget or no budget campaigns, all the way up to $500,000, I think was the biggest spend that I worked on over a four-month time frame. So little to big, lots of understanding, tons of different industries. In fact, I prefer to work in lots of different industries because then I get to learn as I go. So there's a big list of stuff that I work on there. My big love is digital marketing and advertising at the top. Google's actually my favorite. It's not most people's favorite thing to work on, but I absolutely love it. And you'll see these slides coming up wide, but it's definitely my jam. So this is where I started. I don't know how the ages of people on here, but some of you might recognize some of these. When I first started in the industry, I had my very first cell phone. It's the one on the far left there. That was the StarTech. It's still my most favorite cell phone ever. The only thing that you could change on it was the screen name, and it like only could change like 30 characters. And it was like a brick. You'd like drop it all the time and the battery would fly out, but you just put it back together and life was good. And at the time I was working at TELUS, we walked into like this innovation conference for the managers there. And they were like, this cool thing's coming, guys, text messages. And we were like, why would anyone do that? Like the whole room was just like, why would you do that? And then the next thing they do is they showed us that you could watch TV on your phone. Again, all of us were like, that's just dumb. Phones are for calling people. That's changed a bit, hey? And then I learned about Wi-Fi. And this was back when there was a dial-up internet. I don't know. Does anyone remember the sound of dial-up internet? It still haunts me in my sleep sometimes, I swear. But I just couldn't imagine, like, think about where this technology was 20 years ago to where it is now, and just think about where that's going to be 20 more years. It's just, it blows my mind sometimes. So I was an early adapter to technology. I was one of the first people to have a home computer when I was in university, actually. Funny story, I actually once asked a guy out over email. I think it was 1998. It took him 3.5 weeks to reply back to me. And he let me down gently, obviously his loss. But it's just, you know, the idea of things were much slower then, and, you know, technology wasn't as predominant as now. There's some funny unicorns and the baby from Ally McBeal on here, because this is how I learned how to HTML code, was on my MySpace page. So MySpace was a big deal at that time. Previous to Justin Timberlake throwing $5 million at MySpace to bring it back. Didn't work, but yeah, you used to be able to go into the source code of your MySpace page and figure out how to add things. So dancing babies, I added unicorn to fly across the screen. My favorite music was playing, so that's kind of that's where I started. It's a long time ago. It feels like a long time ago. My very first digital campaign was in 2004. I'd already spent quite a bit of time on the internet and figuring things out. It's just something that came quite easily to me. But my former mother-in-law was going through breast cancer at the time. And I don't know if you guys have ever watched someone go through cancer, but it's a horrible thing, right? So it ravaged her body and her soul, and I decided I was going to do something about it. So I started my own nonprofit, actually, called Genuine Productions, with the J-E-N. Yeah, I know. And I ended up putting on live punk and metal concerts called Driven by Compassion to raise money for the Alberta Cancer Foundation. So on top of that, like, the bands played for free, people gave donations, there's silent auctions. I even brought some of my friends up on stage and sold them off as dates to raise money. And I ended up even asking Greg from Bad Religion, which is a big punk band, to give me $1 from each ticket to one of their shows that was up and coming, to give to the Alberta Cancer Foundation. So lots of it at that point was like, kind of like they would consider like guerrilla marketing now, word of mouth, old school posters. But the one thing that I did do well is I figured out how to use MySpace, Facebook, and Friendster. I don't know if anyone remembers Friendster. But I made events on those pages. I made events, created pages for myself, and that was the predominant way of getting the word out. Interestingly enough, most of those platforms didn't have any way of doing any type of advertising. In fact, if you guys look at Twitter themselves, they came out and they had this cool idea, and all these people started like working on or joining in, and they couldn't figure out a way to monetize it. So this is how these platforms figured out a way to make some money, and that's by adding the advertising and targeting. So that's kind of where things started. I'm pretty proud of that. Oh yeah, I raised $45,000 in 3 years doing that. So yeah, it's kind of fun. My last big digital campaign was the summer of 2020. Keep in mind, I do digital campaigns all day, but this one was the last big one. So the spend on this one, just the spend was $30,000 for Instagram, Facebook, Google Ads, which we'll talk about in a little bit there. And we sent most people to landing pages, which was a blog post. So the ITAC team, Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, came up with the concept of escape from home. So we remember what last summer was like. Everyone was like, oh no, you know, what are we gonna do on vacation? We can't go anywhere. And so they came up with this really cool idea, escape from home. And the goal was to target travelers, what we considered hyper locally, which was in a 4-hour driving distance, to check out Indigenous experiences for the first time. Because a lot of people that had been coming to check out these Indigenous experiences were actually outside of Canada. So it was a way to get people to come from our own provinces and fairly close to home. So more about, you know, finding Indigenous experiences in your own backyard. And then because there was a lot of the places that we were doing advertising, we weren't actually accepting travelers, we added in a future inspired kind of bucket list. So let's not forget about the Yukon, you know, let's dream of the Northwest Territories, as opposed to not touching it at all. Yeah, so it worked out quite well. So we reached over 12 million people, had 202,000 engagements, 71,000 website visits, 4,800 new followers to social channels, and 4,500 conversions. So in this case, we defined a conversion as being a phone call, form fill, or click through to a member site, which went directly to a landing page where people could purchase. We tracked this in Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and for this campaign, the cost per conversion was $6.66, which is obviously a funny number. But it's amazing from a benchmark and analysis perspective, because we can see definitively that this did a really good job at getting to the right people, because we saw them doing those conversion pieces at the end. Claire, are there any questions on this? I feel like this is one that I might have some questions on.
No, there aren't any questions. Lots of comments, but more comments about your slides because they're so funny.
Okay.
Than actual questions. Although we do have one from Jade now.
Yeah.
And Jade is asking, what was the worth of the conversions? So was there a dollar amount for each conversion?
That's a damn good question. I like you, Jade. It's Jade, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. That's a really good question. So complexity with this is that the packages themselves or the conversion point themselves weren't a purchase on that website. So I actually couldn't track it all the way to the end of conversion. All we could do is say, we sent 120 people to your website. What did that look like on your end? And so it was kind of a looser conversion that I would have liked. But the members themselves did say definitively that they did see conversions on the other side or sales on the other side. So sometimes when you're working on these, you get as good as you can. So in this case, we knew that final conversion, you know, is something that we couldn't 100% attribute back to, but we could say we generated this much traffic. And at the end, we could have probably nerded out and figured out what their closing ratio is, like how many people do we need to send to the website, or how many people will reach out to you versus how many people will buy. So there is ways of figuring that out, but this one was more like one of those yeah, we got more traffic, we definitely saw more sales. Mostly because people weren't proactively looking at this point, so we can almost say that the majority of what was happening on that sales side was directed to this traffic.
We have another question, but I also have one myself.
Yeah.
So, but when they told you, okay, you have a $30,000 click spend, Did they tell you what they were hoping to get in return for that?
Well, we had an old benchmark from a fairly big, from a very big campaign that I think maybe you worked with me on, Claire, a few years ago. But that one was a little bit different because that one was like what I would consider a spray and play, which is when you just give money to a big advertiser and they just spray it everywhere, right? Because they're going to have a bigger reach just based on, you know, different partners that they work with and that kind of stuff. But in this case, we couldn't do that, right? Because we knew that people were getting flamed, rightfully so, about trying to reach travelers or trying to talk people into traveling, especially cross province, cross borders. Like, it was just so the spray and play would not have made sense for this campaign. And in fact, they were going to go that route, and I stopped and said, you know, this doesn't make sense. Let's look at this from a different place. So we had benchmarks based on bigger ones, but like coronavirus and COVID changed everything. So we had knowledge of what worked before, but we had to test and see what would work in this market now, because it left it left a lot of risk that we didn't have previously. You know, going into it, we had defined goals of, you know, we want our members to feel like they're getting a good amount of people to their website. We want people to see these experiences and to remind them that they can do this in their own backyard. But do we have cut and dried, increased traffic by X? You know, like we didn't. It was more, let's test and see what happens here, because it's a whole new different world for us from an advertising perspective. I just went on a tangent. I hope that answered your question, Jane.
Do you think you could quickly summarize what the click spend is for Shauna?
Sure. So a click spend is the amount that's paid to each one to our platforms in order to advertise. So the Instagram, Facebook, and Google ads, that click spend equaled $30,000. So it was a combination of those three. One thing that I'm going to touch on that I didn't is nonprofit Google ads. So those of you who work with nonprofit companies or are a nonprofit company, this is important. So Google has nonprofit grant, and what they'll give you is up to $10,000 of Google spend for free per month. So everyone's like, whoa, holy crap, this is freaking awesome. But I will tell you that it takes an awful lot of work. So if you think about it from this perspective, you can only use search ads for these ones, meaning that you can't use image ads, and you can't do any type of remarketing or retargeting. It's just going to be the content ads that you see when you Google something up at the top. Your cost per click has to be under $2, which for a tourism company is very low. Typically your cost per click is going to be $7 or up to be competitive. So this one maxes out at $2. And you have to have a 5% click-through rate or higher, which is really high. So we do this well because this is our jam. This is what we do. But almost everyone that I know that have picked up or had wanting to do these nonprofits, they've had it closed down for not meeting the like expectations that they have within probably about 3 or 4 months. So if you want to work on these, make sure you have a good strategy going into it, which I could talk about for a whole other workshop. But I just wanted to mention it because it's really cool, because Google will pay for your spend on this, but you have to do it right. So the nonprofit ads do not go into that budget because Google covered that spend. Just to add complexities. How about that? Okay, so paid advertising, it's fast and furious. It's one of the fastest things that you can do for a client. But I will say that there's quite a bit of work that you need to do before you just turn it on. So a lot of people are like, oh, cool, we'll just put on an ad. You can do that tomorrow, right? Well, anyway, I'll go through why that doesn't make any sense. There's thousands of reasons to use paid advertising. Most of them come down to speed, as it is fast and furious. unlike a longer term strategy for something like search engine optimization. So SEO will usually take 3 or 4 months actually to peak after you make changes to start seeing organic growth, meaning that if you're working on your SEO, it'll take Google, because Google goes through and they spider and they use their algorithms to take a look at it in order to get peak conversion with SEO, again, 3 to 4 months. I can usually see if an ad campaign is going to work well within the first couple of days. So there's a big difference there. And depending on like the spend and who you're targeting, you could create like a lead generation funnel or a conversion funnel within a week, probably, on Google Ads. So it's definitely going to help you increase traffic to a website. What I usually recommend is, if you're working on SEO, is that you bring in ads and you have your ad spend higher while Google's looking into your website and your SEO. And then as your organic comes up, your ad spend should go down. So it supplements while you're still working on your website. Same with a brand new website. So you might not have any SEO or anything behind it, and you want to come up first in the search engine pages on Google. This is the way to do it. All right, I reached the top of the SERPs, which I just talked about. SERP is an acronym that you guys can just throw out at dinner parties now. Search engine ranking pages. So it's getting to the top of Google. So if anyone talks to you about SERPs, that's what they are. It'll help you sell specific products and services quickly. We have a client that just had like a 20% off sale for shoulder season cabins. So they would want to get in front of people quickly with that. They had a discount, which you could track all the way through. So it is a good way to sell a specific product or services quickly. Get more people out to your event. Sure, why not? Not a lot of people know that you can actually boost an event in Facebook, but you can. And the cool thing about events in Facebook is if you say you're going, then it'll get posted, so your friends will see that you're going. And sometimes people are influenced by that, and it can work out really well. So boost your events and make sure you put your events up. You can also get more downloads. Sometimes people want, they build white papers, or they spend all this time putting something together, so you might want to get more traffic for that. One thing that Google Ads will let you do that no other platform will let you do that's very cool is you can track phone calls. So you put a little snippet of code into your website. And what that means is if a person is, I'm sure you guys have seen these, you Google something, you're looking for a new dentist or something, an ad comes up and there's a phone number in the hyperlinks. Then what you would do is if someone clicks on that phone number and goes to your website, it will track that as a conversion. If you have conversion tracking set up, track that as a conversion. And you can even set it to say, okay, only if they spend 30 seconds or more on the phone, just to make sure that's not like a spammy call. So you can definitively say this was a good call, it was over 30 seconds. But you can track phone calls in Google Ads. So I think that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people think about that. It'll help you get in front of a new audience. So when you're doing search engine optimization and you have a local focus, and say you're like, okay, well, I want to see if there is a demand for my products in like Nanaimo, because maybe I want to put a new office there, or I'm considering hiring someone there. You could put an ad to just get in front of that new audience without having to change anything on your website side or change any of your marketing side. You can also connect with your existing audience. So that's remarketing and retargeting. Build your following. You have to be careful with this one. I've seen people use this. When do paid following on like Facebook or Instagram, and unless you do targeted paid following, you could potentially just like get weirdo spammers from Russia. So be thoughtful about that. And talked about the new service areas. And this is one that people don't think about, but you can test out your marketing copy and images pretty quick on here. So if you have new photography that you want to use, or you're testing out what you should put as the header image on your new website, Sometimes it's nice just to create ads, put that in there, or put in your new copy, put in your new images, and let the people clicking tell you which one's most popular, which one's most eye-catching. I've done this for like marketing copy or like campaign taglines, that kind of stuff. Like just throw all your ideas out to Google or out to Facebook, put it into a dynamic ad, and see what gets clicked on. There's a lot. You can tell I like this stuff. There's lots of stuff you can do. Do we have any questions, Claire? No. Okay.
No, not right now. I'm thinking there was one that we did for Got Mold. I think it was where you tested. No, it was tourism, where you tested different different taglines for adverts, and it was like, do the bears work? Do the this works? And it was, I was really surprised at how definitive the answers were.
Yeah.
As a designer, I know what I think is going to work, and often that's what we go with. But then gave it over to you, and you just created a few ads super quickly, and within 24 hours we had definitive answers as to which images people liked most and what taglines they liked most. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's a cool way of doing market research faster, and without the pain of like trying to get the right people in the room and paying an outside company to do it. Like you can definitely use paid as market research. Yeah, there's a whole other workshop there, friend, but yeah, you definitely can. It's a lot of fun. So paid promotion is dog eat dog. So that it's a horrible thing to literally imagine. So let's not do that. But it's the idea that in some ways, it's the more you pay, the better chances are of getting clicks. So that's what people think anyway. They'll go, oh, I can't afford that because I'm up against, you know, I'm just a small cookie company, and what if Oreo or something? I'm up against Oreo. Well, the thing is, the cost is actually determined by more than just your budget. So even if you threw the highest amount of budget into it, there's not actually a guarantee that anyone's going to click on it. So this is important, especially if you're talking to clients about and trying to justify cost on things. So the cost is actually determined by the platform you select, who you're targeting, competition. And I put in the 3 Ps here. You guys are going to laugh. The 3 Ps in paid advertising are pills, porn, and poker. So be wary of doing any type of advertising for anything medical, anything pornography, and gambling. Just say no. Just walk away. Just say, Jen said it's okay for me to say no to work on these. Just don't. Super competitive. They can be very spammy to work on. And one day you could wake up and you're selling teeth whitening products and like acai berry tea that doesn't work. Like, don't do it. Be really thoughtful about this. Okay, so then your conversion flow is another piece, and the trust factor. So if you have an overall great experience from click all the way through landing page and conversion, you have a lower Google or whatever platform you're using will actually charge you less per click. If you're doing a bad job at it, you'll pay more. Yeah, so I've worked on a campaign actually in the early 2000s. I bet you no one on this call knows, but does anyone know the highest cost per click on advertising in general? The keyword for that? Anyone have any idea? But you don't. It's a type of cancer. It's a mesothelioma, which is a cancer that you get from asbestos. So if someone's searching that, they probably have it. And those ads will take you to lawyers because there's been like huge lawsuits. And I worked on a campaign where the click into this, I worked into it because I didn't have the ability to say no to my clients at that time. But I worked on this. It was $250 a click in. And that was 15 years ago, so I can even imagine what it is now. but anyone who clicked in and had it, there was a very likelihood that they would win a lawsuit. So it was lawyers going after that. And I've seen conversions as little as 5 cents. So I worked on a YouTube campaign actually, and the highest cost per click was 5 cents, just because we did a really good job of making sure that that landing page and everything did well. So yeah, probably from a social perspective, if your clicks are over $1, you need to take a step back and look at these pieces: who you're targeting, who your competition is, what that flow looks like in your overall experience. If you're doing Google ads and it's not super competitive, if it's over probably $3, take a step back too. Is there any questions?
We have a question from Rick.
Yeah.
He's wondering if you've done any mobile geo-targeting. So he says, like, when someone walks into an area and an ad appears on their phone.
I personally haven't. I have experience with it because this is a funny story. I was a mommy blogger. I'm a reformed mommy blogger. But I ended up doing really well on my blog. In fact, I was on CNN, and I did a whole bunch of different talks on, like, I ranked #1 for how to get US Netflix in Canada when Sons of Anarchy just came out. And I got like 2,000 clicks in a day. Like, it was nuts. And then I actually my site ranked #1 for plus size Lululemon for a long time. And if you clicked on it, it wrote about how much I didn't like Lululemon because the owner at the time, Chip, said really horrible things about plus size women and how he didn't want them in their clothes. And, you know, he felt sorry for our plight. But it doesn't look good. And so anyway, I wrote this blog post about it, and I did all the search engine optimization for it to rank for plus size Lululemon clothes, and I did #1 in all of Canada and the US, just to talk badly. And then CNN called me because they found out that he said these things, and I became an expert on Lululemon. Anyway, what was the question? Oh, right. Okay. So MasterCard paid for me as a mommy blogger to blog about them. They sent me to New York for 4 days, all expenses, like 4-star hotels. It was the freaking coolest thing. But what they were bringing out is geo-targeting, and through MasterCard. So for example, if you had a MasterCard and you're walking past a Starbucks, they would be able to send you a coupon saying, hey, we miss you. Here's the, you know, go to Starbucks, or come here, or you know, or like a oil change. Like, so I personally haven't worked on these ads because, well, one, now the businesses are a little bit different that we work with primarily right now. I'd say that they're more tourism and Indigenous experience focused. But I have seen it done really well previously. And like I said, MasterCard were kind of front and center in doing that. And like the geo-targeting, it intrigues me, but I actually personally haven't set it up. I did have one person that wanted to do it previously, but they were like, they were in the service industry, and it didn't make any sense, because who wants to walk somewhere and be like, wealth management? Like, that's kind of lame. But if you're working in the service industry or selling a product with service, it could be really cool. I can imagine the conversion path being really sweet in it too. I just haven't had a chance to take a look at it. It's a good question though. All right. So how does this work, guys? Oh, sorry. Is there another question?
Kerry mentioned that Get in the Loop is being used in her area. Is that the Comox Valley? But Get in the Loop, it says here, is a platform that enables our integration partners to add value to their website and app audiences by substantially expanding their local advertising. So I guess it's a service that allows people to geo-target in their adverts. Apparently that's working here.
Cool. I haven't tried it out, but
someone's asking, so they work in the industry and their clients are restaurants. Would it be potentially helpful for restaurants?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably ways of doing it that doing that type of targeting. Like if you're walking past, yeah, that'd be cool. I would say test it out. I don't have any restaurants that I'm working with right now, and everything's kind of takeout, so I'm not sure it's the best time. It depends. It's a weird time for advertising. But I think non-COVID times, it would make sense to test that out for sure. I would put money towards it and test it out.
Okay, and also, I'm sorry, Danica, I'm not sure I understand the question. Facebook or Google? Danica, you can speak up if you like. You can unmute your microphone and ask yourself.
Hey Jen. Yeah, I was just wondering about the geo-targeting. Is that something that you would use on Facebook ads or Google ads? Hope that makes sense.
It's a really good question. You know what? I don't know. I didn't even know Facebook has geo-targeting. If they do, it's something I haven't looked at. So that's, sorry, I can't help you on that one. I don't know. I'm just gonna admit I don't know. I've seen it used in Google for sure. And I've seen it used by third party. I have not seen it used by Facebook, nor have I actually seen how to set it up. So I'm not sure that you can. But usually when I'm doing my testing, I almost always, so this is a whole other slide, but I almost always test everything in Google and then move it into Facebook and other platforms. The reason for that is because your cost per click in Google is smaller, usually depending on what it is that you're working with, and it's faster. So you can get tons more eyeballs on something within a couple of days than you can with Facebook. And so what I'll do is I'll put up Google search ads, and then I'll do it I'll do like 12 variations. Claire's seen this, it's a lot. I'll do like 12 variations, and then I'll take a look at the top 6, pause the bottom 6, take a look at the top 6, and then start working with the top 3 to see, oh, okay, this is the tone that people like, you know, this is the type of content that's resonating, and then I'll create the next 3 and then pause and then create. So it takes a little bit of time to do huge amounts of A/B testing and variation testing, but at the end, typically have a well clicked through lower cost per click ad, and then I can take that headline and use it as copy in Facebook. I can take the winning image and use it as my image in Facebook. So almost always my data driver is Google, and then I'll push it into Facebook and Instagram and to whatever platform that we're working on.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
So how does this all work? Well, you, my friends, are just data in Google. So this is my profile. You guys can search this up. On how to do this, look up, personalized ads in Google, and you can see what they think about you, what they know about you. It's kind of creepy, kind of also awesome. You can see this by clicking manage my Google account and then privacy and personalization. But think about it, every search, every call, every click you make becomes data for Google to use to advertise for you. So if you look through these ones, it says that I'm like between 18 and 44, accurate, female, yeah. I'm into advertising and marketing, yeah. Affiliate program, sure, why not? I think the one that came up that I laughed at was baked goods, because I was like, why does Google think I'm into baked goods? And then I realized that I have been begging strangers on the internet to send me gluten-free Oreos because I'm celiac and I really want to try them. So I think now it's like Jen's really into baked goods, but really I just want to try gluten-free Oreos because I'm celiac. So I thought that was pretty funny, but I know I have some in the mail now with some friends on Twitter. Bread makers is interesting. I kind of tell you about that one, but just so this is the data that Google knows about me of how to target. Things that's not in here that they also know about me: where I live, my household income, if I'm a parent or if I'm not a parent. So these are ways that you can also go in and target people in Google Ads. So yes, someone could target me based on the term, or that my interest is baked goods. And then here's the Facebook version. So it says that I'm into alcohol, parenting, pets, and social issues. I think it's funny because like alcohol and parenting sometimes goes hand in hand, but that's just me. But you know, if you think about it, we're using these free tools, but our cost to use these free tools is our data. So some people find it creepy. I think it's fascinating. This is another thing that you can see if you go into your privacy in Facebook. It'll show you what you're interested in. You can actually go in and click on see fewer if you want to as well. And then you can see advertisers that you've seen most recently as well. So some of these I've definitely clicked on and I recognize right away. Maybe I have an addiction to Etsy. Yeah, so you are data. You have these free things that you use in exchange for all of your data. So here's some ads that I've seen in the past couple, maybe week. And I have to say that these companies do a pretty good job of targeting to me. Society6 and Zulily are both ones that I've previously purchased from. So these are retargeting. They're trying to get me back into their app. And I haven't spent money with them in a long time. The Liquid Death one is just hilarious. Of course I clicked it. I don't need canned water. I mean, who needs canned water? It was just more that it's like, try a new sales pitch that isn't for Satan worshipers. And I'm like, this is awesome. I don't even know what this is, but I'm clicking on this, man. And then as for the ring, I was on a Facebook chat with my friend Alex talking about whether or not we would ever get married again, and accidentally threw in the E word. So now it just thinks I'm getting engaged, and there I said it again. So now I'm just gonna start getting things about weddings and such. Yeah, so that happens. Pays attention. A couple of years ago, I bought some baby clothes for a friend and I thought I was pregnant, and even got to the point where one of the advertisers like sent baby formula to my mailbox and stuff. So it's a little creepy. Hey guys. Your phone listens to you. Again, anything you search up or click becomes data. Some people find it creepy. I think it's pretty fun. They're going to take my data anyway, so they might as well use it to find me kick-ass things to buy. That's my way of looking at it. All right. I think I'm going to take you guys through what this looks like as a click and going through, but I might need Craig to help me figure out how to get. Well, why don't we take a quick break if that's okay? And then we'll come back and I'll show you guys what that looks like. So the next step is we'll walk through, we'll actually go into my personal Facebook and go through an ad, and we'll critique the experience from clicking on it to the landing page, so we can try to figure out what that path looks like. And then after that, we'll go through what the strategy is behind it. And I'll give you guys tips and tricks on how to, and everything from creating a strategy to picking an image to doing reporting. So lots of juicy stuff happening. Okay, so here's my personal Facebook. We're gonna go in and take a look at this ad that came up. I scrolled through some marketing ads because they should know what they're doing. Although we can critique those too. So this one is, it looks like a pea on a stick. Really funny because I actually own these. Why? Because Instagram told me I should buy them and I did. That's the only reason why I know about them, and they actually work pretty well, but anyway. I think this is funny though. It's like a true encyclopedia. Okay, that's funny to me anyway. I don't know about you guys. So a couple of things on here is we can see that the people are like laughing, but we don't really know what they're laughing about. There's some comments on here. So anyway, let's click through and see what happens. Okay. I have to accept cookies, always accept cookies. Learn what your body needs. Okay, get started. So we can see that they're using like UTMs, which is good. So they're tracking that. Get started seems to be their number one call to action. So when you're on a landing page, you really only want someone to do one thing. Otherwise, they get kind of overwhelmed and just walk away. So it looks like they want us to just get started. It's a pretty nice looking website. So if we click, oh, look at that. Did you see that? It's just one scrolling page, just anchor text. So get started takes you just to order. And then there's some testimonials and stuff in here. So there's some social proofs. That's pretty good. So if we were going to go to order, so let's see what this looks like. All right, it's pretty normal. Well, it looks like an average like Shopify type site. So yeah, that wasn't super interesting, but they've probably figured out how to do this because you are purchasing something on the other side. So this is an easy conversion way of tracking. So you can track all the way from that Facebook ad click. You can see that they're tracking using UTM codes. If they're smart, they'll do variation tracking as well. So maybe that UTM that you saw at the top also includes some information about that, like this is the carousel ad. Maybe they're testing another one that's just like a single ad. Maybe they're testing another one that's video. So they just want to make sure that they can see which ad. Otherwise, all of your traffic from Facebook will just go into analytics as Facebook. And you can't see what happened with your ads. You'd have to make assumptions based on taking a look at your insights in Facebook of how many clicks came in versus what happens on the other side, unless you use something like these UTM codes, which there are UTM builders in Google. Yeah.
So this was a Facebook advert, an advert they paid for. They're paying for every click, and it's sending people to their homepage on their website.
Yeah, and that's not ideal, but at the same time, they have quite a bit of information. So I don't usually recommend that someone sends you to the homepage. But their entire website is just one scrolling page with anchor text.
Right.
So they don't really have secondary, and it would be too much for them to just send me to a buy page because I don't know enough about it to purchase at that end. So you're right, you wouldn't normally do that. But their websites, I think it matches what the ad looked like. So it's not terrible. But if you are talking about a specific experience or product or services and you take someone to your home screen, you're doing it wrong. In this case, they have one product. They have one website that just does this anchor, which is when I click here and then it moves me down. That's considered an anchor. So it's not a bad experience. I think there's a question in there. I shouldn't have looked. Hold on. I'm gonna exit out.
There's a question from Jade. How do you feel about the one-page scrolling design?
I think if your product or services, like they have one product. They want you to do one thing and that's why it works. If you have a complex product or service, or you have a ton of content, they don't have a ton of content down here. It's not great. But it can work well if you just have one product or services, and it's pretty easy to move down a conversion path. But I'm sure Claire could go on a tangent about that too.
Also, Koe is asking, what is UTM tracking?
UTM tracking is let's cost them some more money. Okay, so watch this click. See all this like crazy stuff right here? This is a UTM code that makes sure that you can track this click in analytics. There are free, there's a UTM, I lost my train of thought. If you Google it, UTM trackers, Google UTM trackers, there's forms that are free that you can use that will build this for you. So here, if we were to look at this, I wasn't intending to go into this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on here. But you can see here, so they have that it's coming from Facebook. If you really want to nerd out, you can see what they're tracking here. But it came from Facebook, medium, paid. Source Facebook, and I think it also said interest plus personas. So they're even like tracking in their UTM how they tracked me. So at the end of this, it'll say that there was a click through, and if I was to purchase, it would say there was a conversion based on from Facebook, based on persona. What was it? Persona and anyway, there's another word in there. Persona and interest tracking. And I personally would have put in that there was a carousel, but that's just me. So they'd be able to definitively say this ad resulted in this sale. So this is just another way of tracking. Mm-hmm. So that is, I'm going to try to exit out of this. This is not being happy right now.
Amy's asking if you had a lot of content on your website, where would you want to send them to your products page from the advert, or?
It's a good question. Yeah, if you have lots of content, I would send them, when you create a landing page for an ad, you want to send them to a place where two things. One, you want to figure out what your conversion is and make that front and center. So for them, it was just buy, right? Easy peasy. Mm-hmm. And then secondary is you want to give them just enough information to make a decision before you have that button. And then if they're like me and spend tons of time researching stuff, you'd want to put more information down below that fold and your first button, and then maybe you put another button after it. So you typically have two different, well, this is a real generalization, but you typically have two different buyers. One is the like, just show it to me, I'll do a thing. And the second one is give me enough information to feel good about this. So you want to appease the just show me a thing and buy something. So that was how we saw on that landing page, how there was the, quite small amount of information, but it showed it what it was. And then you had your CTA or call to action button. And then if you kept scrolling down, there's more information, another call to action button. So that's a good way of doing it if you have more content. But there's some people that will just trust it and be like, cool, shut up and take my money. And I've done that before too. So you want to appease both of them. In Google, I actually did this recently. I wanted to buy an espresso machine. So you can take a look at it. This will come up in multiple different ways. This is shopping ads. Shopping ads are within Google, so you can set these up. This is called a map pack. So Google's assuming that I want to buy one close to me. Thanks, Google. I do. And so it'll show me where I can buy one. And then they'll start going into more like, how can I, what's the best, what's the most affordable, because they're making assumptions that I want to buy this, which is fine. If I write buy espresso machine, we'll see what changes. So some of these changed. Up comes an ad for I drink coffee. These are like snippets that came off the page or that are within Google Ads. There's nothing in there. These are your organic, meaning that people didn't pay for these ones. And sometimes we'll see ads on the bottom too. Here's another ad. And here's some images. So if I wanted to, I can click through and this should take me right to purchase this. If it doesn't, they're doing it wrong, especially if it's $2,000. Looks, whoa. What is this? So for this site specifically, they actually don't want me to buy anything. What they want is my email address. Sneaky. So we'll see this. So their conversion path on this specific ad is to get my email, because that's the first thing that they want me to do and the only thing that they want me to do. I can exit out of it, but you can see that they must have figured out that people are more likely to purchase from them if they're on their email list and getting sales or something like that than just going in and purchasing a $2,400 very beautiful espresso machine. If you were going to buy, take a look at this, shoes. So say we're going to buy shoes. I don't know, some people buy shoes online. What if I wanted to buy size 10? Let's see if this works. I haven't looked. Hearing aid batteries, no. Buy a size 10 Docs. I like Doc Martens. There we go. Hopefully this takes me, so I can see that there's ads here. Those are cool. Here's ads here, including Doc Martens. This is interesting. Why do you think Doc Martens is advertising on their own name? Anyone?
Jade is saying direct versus reseller.
Could be, but it's you have there's almost an 80% higher click-through rate on your organic link if you also have an ad.
So
I'll
can you
say
say
it again.
80% higher click-through rate on your
organic link.
Yeah.
If you have an ad, because it adds extra trust factor. So now that you've seen it twice, people are more likely to click on your organic actually than the ad. They're gonna be like, yeah, this is what I wanted. I'm gonna click on this. Pretty cool, hey? You shouldn't pay a lot if you're doing ads on your own name. It's called branded ads. You shouldn't pay a lot for those. So under like 30 cents, don't pay anything more than like 30 cents on that, or you're doing it wrong, or someone's competing against you for your own keyword, your own business name. It's a whole other thing. Okay, so then if we're taking a look at this, this took me to a size chart, which is weird. Because I put in a size. So personally, I think they're doing this wrong. Because ideally you would want them to take me to a place where I saw, can you see the email thing pop up again? That's annoying. So really think about that from a conversion standpoint, because it can also, if people can X out quickly out of that without even looking at it. But now I want these shoes, so that happened. So again, you want, if you are selling something that people can buy, one of your keywords are going to be buy espresso machine. You want to go into a long tail key phrase. It would be like buy manual espresso machine near me, which means that you wouldn't have to spend the same, like you wouldn't have to throw as much money at it as someone that has a $2,400 model that are probably going to outspend you on just the word espresso machine, which is what would be considered short tail.
Jen, could you touch quickly on the difference between short tail and long tail keywords?
Sure. Short tail is espresso machine. Long tail is buy espresso machine near me. So you add in, it's like, you know when you guys are Googling something and you look at the first page after you Google something, you're like, it's not right. So you start adding more words to refine your search to make it more applicable to you. So the more you add to it, the more it becomes a long tail key phrase as opposed to short. So if someone was doing like, I don't know, like if someone wanted to buy a house, oh my God, what a competitive market for like realtors. Say you're a realtor and you're like, okay, I want to be number one for buy a house. You probably don't, because you'd probably rather be one for buy a house in the Comox Valley, buy a house in Courtenay, buy a new house in Courtenay, buy an older house in Courtenay, buy a single family home in Courtenay, buy a detached, you start going after those ones. Those are your long tail versus just home. Yeah. All right.
So they'll give you better qualified leads.
Yes, they should. And it'll also be less cost per click. So here's my little rainbow tree, little story about that. It came up on my Facebook ads and I clicked on it right away. So early November, so I wasn't thinking too much about Christmas at that point. In fact, I don't even like Christmas, so like whatever. Another story there. But so I clicked on their landing page with this tree, and I didn't do anything, no action. I just clicked off my own business. A couple days later, another ad showed up, and it said that the tree was in Courtney, and then I could just go pick it up. And I was like, oh, cool. Didn't think about it again, X'd it out. The third one said it was in aisle 3, and that there was 2 available. So I ended up getting in my car, and I went and bought this little rainbow tree. So this is how remarketing works. It takes time and effort to figure this out. And there's a big strategy behind it. Click 1, this is what happens. If they convert, then they're off the path. If they don't convert, we're going to show them a second ad. Don't convert there, but clicked means they're still interested. We're going to show them the third ad. So this is remarketing, and it can be done in Facebook and also in Google. Yeah.
And it's interesting that with every ad, they gave you more and more detail. They made it easier and easier for you to get that actual tree.
Yeah. Okay, so looks easy, right? You guys are like, cool, looks totally easy. Like, I wish it really was. So here's the surefire way to create stellar ads. First is you start with research. Second, you dig into your goals. Third, you know who you're targeting. You build out a strategy, decide your platforms, work on your content, test, and then test, do some more testing. And then pull together all of your reports and analyze. So this is my typical process. No worries about having to take notes on this stuff either. I'll give you guys a link to be able to get my presentation after, but so I'll walk through each one of these. Regardless of the amount of years of experience, I still never guarantee that a campaign is going to work. Super important. You can give it a fighting chance, you can adapt and you can change, but sometimes campaigns just don't like grow legs, right? Sometimes they just don't work. So, you know, that's why some people will say, oh, well, we'll get you to the top of the search page. And it's like, yeah, you will, because that's how ads work. It doesn't mean that there's conversions on the other side. So just remember that for anything digital, just don't guarantee it. Just don't. You can give it a fighting chance. You can tell them you'll put effort and energy into it, but just don't guarantee it. The real surefire way to create a stellar campaign is to fail fast. So with this, you know, you may laugh at this. I hope you did. And if there's really, I talked to you about the one thing you need to take away is the closed captioning, but this is even really more important. And this is actually the motto for my team here at the Update Company is fail fast. So what this means is you take a look at your ads, and if something's not working, you don't worry about it. Just adapt it. You know, take yourself out of the outcome, take yourself out of the assumptions, and just change and adapt. Like, oh, well, that didn't work. Cool, we're going to move on. You know, you may have used wording or a concept that just doesn't resonate. It's hard to tell. Like, I can make assumptions. Claire can make assumptions. Chris Bowker's going to make assumptions. Could any one of us be right? Sure. Could any one of us be wrong? Yes. It's all about figuring out that something's not going to work quickly and adapting it and changing it. There's no sense in throwing budget at something that's not working. So I'm not telling you to give up, but I am telling you that if something doesn't feel like it's working, and it's okay to use spidey sense on this too, that you feel like something's not working, just change it up. The more you take your own personal feelings and outcomes out of these campaigns, the easier it'll be to do them well. And keep your client in the loop. I can tell you definitively that when I've gone to a client and said, you know what, we tried this and it's not working and here's what we're going to do, they've always appreciated it. And they've always been thankful for my willingness to adapt and change. Don't be tied to one concept or one idea. And then make sure you're talking about it and communicating. So anytime my team comes and they're like, I tried a thing, it didn't work, we're like, awesome. let's try again, let's try something else. So this isn't about, a lot of times I'll hear people say, I tried ads, they didn't work. And I always feel a little disheartened because it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, we could have adapted this, or let's change this, or did you consider this, or what about this tagline, or, you know, it's coming at it from a refreshed place instead of a place of like all or nothing, black or white, win or fail. So we start with research. If you don't know why someone would want your product or services, it's going to be hard to promote. If you don't believe in the business, it's going to be impossible. So it's just about, I mean, we can talk about like energy and attention and that kind of stuff, but I can tell you definitively, if you don't feel like working on these ads and you don't believe in this company or product or services, it's not going to work. So you're going to want to start off at the very beginning. Even if your client like tells you tons of information, you know, we've been in business for 22 years and, you know, we won this award in 1982 and, you know, it's cool, but do your own research too. So listen to what they say, but also take a look at their competitors, read their reviews, talk to their employees. Like people don't really pay that much attention to their differentiators outside of marketing speak, but it's up to you guys to figure out what's going to make that person click in, and it's going to be something that your target market will really like take to heart or want to support. And all right, what else do we have here? Yeah, just don't take your client's word for it, because they can tell you, they'll just tell you whatever they tell people on the phone. Do your own research. So take the time to figure out if it's worth it for your client. So this is important. A lot of times people come to me and they'll be like, okay, yeah, well, sure, let's do ads, Jen. I have like $400. Like, it's not how it works with me anyway. So I think our minimum right now for clients is about $2,000 a month in just maintenance plus spend. And typically a minimum of 6 months, which is about a $32,000 investment. So how many of X do you need to sell on these ads to justify your costs? For our clients, we have some that have like luxury 5-star floating resorts, you know, at $5,000 a week. These guys are just like, yeah, cool. If you can convert this many people, or you can fill this many boats for us, or we can get this many people on tours, or we can do this. But always make sure that your own cost plus spend translates into enough for them. Make sure it's worth it. And then, figure out how much something would cost. So as we talked about before, you can totally nerd out. You can figure out their closing ratios and say, okay, so I have to bring X amount of people to this website. 4 of them is going to fill out a form, and you're going to close 2 of those. Awesome. So then I can figure out how much that spend's going to be. Very nerdy, but figuring that out. And at the end of the day, maybe paid advertising isn't the best strategy for them. It's okay to say no to people. And ask yourself if it'll be fun. For me, this is a huge thing. If this isn't going to be fun and you don't want to create these ads, don't do it. I give you permission to say no to stuff that's going to be annoying and will be hard on your heart or soul or just psyche. Don't do it. And define what fun is. For me, sometimes I like working with new industries, even if they have a smaller budget, because then I get to test out new things, right? It's pretty cool. But yeah, be cheesy. So this next part is about goals. So there's a joke in our industry that an awareness campaign is a conversion campaign that you failed at. So it's like you're cherry picking. Guys, even an awareness campaign needs to have goals associated. Maybe it's about followers or engagement numbers, but don't just say you're putting out an awareness campaign for just putting out an awareness campaign. Just try to bring it back to goals. So what I like to start off is by defining success. So is it increasing sales by a certain amount, increasing engagement by a certain amount, increasing followers, or you want to sell 4 rooms at the floating resort for June, you know, and then you can say, okay, I know that that's my goal, or you need to fill a certain amount of hotels room during shoulder season. I can never say that right. But yeah, you want to define what success is going to look like. Why? Because 1, if you don't know, then it's going to be hard for you to figure out your targeting and what you're supposed to do. And 2, your clients will always come back to you 100% and say, what have you done for me lately? And you have to be able to answer that question. Well, our goals were to increase sales by 20%. We're actually at 25%. And we did it a month early. So be able to answer those questions outside of, yeah, they're running, so we're good. There needs to be more context to this. It can't just be smoke, mirrors, and bullshit. It's not magic. Like, do the work to figure this out in the beginning. If you don't, it kind of puts this industry to shame. And then, yeah, it's just not good. So here's an interesting campaign that I worked on. So I had a campaign that I worked on in Edmonton. It was for a luxury development company. So they were building houses just outside of Edmonton, brand new area, targeting like young families. These houses, I started at about a $700,000 range. And they wanted me to do paid advertising for them through Facebook, Google, and YouTube. I'm just adding YouTube, but even though it's part of Google, just so you guys know that. So we had to figure out, the goal was to get people to show homes. And if you think about that from an attribution perspective, it's like, that's a hard one. Because how would you figure out if someone that you targeted on an ad walked into a show home, right? It's not the easiest one. So this is what I came up with. I came up with that they fill out a form saying where they heard about the show home before they came in. So the ease of this is that we tied it into a contest. And so they were like, oh yeah, totally, here's my information. So that helped. The bad part is you're always just gonna get last touch attribution. People will never say, except for me, who's a nerd, I went and picked up a tree because you sent me 3 ads. And the first one said the tree, the second one said the aisle, the third one said that, you know, or that there's 2 available, and the third. That's because that's how my brain works. Most people only remember the very last thing before they make a purchase. So, I mean, it was a touch point, and people could say I Googled it or I saw it on Facebook, and we would just attribute it back. Mostly because they didn't get a lot of just people walking down the neighborhood going, oh, look, a show home. Like, it didn't happen very often, so it worked there. And then another thing that we did is we added counters at the doors. So each time the door opened, it counted. So we can see how many people, you know, if there was an ad that we ran, if we saw more people walk through the door. So it took a little bit of time to figure that one out, but it worked. Again, there's other pieces, so you can't say 100% attribution, but you can say that that campaign brought people in, right? And then we also, I'm just trying to think if there was anything else that we did. Of course, there was like all of the tracking on the website of bringing people to the website, but that was a hard one, you know? Like, sometimes you have to think about these successes and what that looks like and how you're going to measure it from a real outside of the box place. So if you can get to the point where you're like, cool, we need to purchase this thing to be able to count how many people are coming in, or we're going to create a contest and people will tell us you know, where they heard about us. I think, you know, at least you can close some of the gaps in trying to figure out those conversions. But if you create these success factors, then you also have to figure out how you're going to measure that, or it doesn't matter. Does anyone have any questions about that? No?
Oh, we're good right now.
Okay.
Did you also track phone calls with those houses?
Yeah, through Google Ads, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was really cool too, because at the end, I definitively, because we figured that out, sold 4 houses for them. So that felt good. Yeah, totally. And then, so then I brought them in like a couple $1 million. So obviously helped with my costs. But it was a big campaign, $500,000 in spend too. So they sold the whole area got sold, and they pre-sold a whole other section specifically because of that campaign. And I was only a piece of it because there was also radio ads, and I think they did billboards as well. But it was up to me to figure out also how to attribute billboard to website views. So Claire's like, ugh. So I had to create vanity URLs. So it said like the client's name /radio /billboards / like something that they would remember, so we could at least track it that way. And then that's how we did the conversion path. But yeah, it can get pretty nerdy and intense to try to figure this stuff out. But we did a really good job with it, and they were really proud. I felt like a rock star. I handed them a 40-page document of my reporting at the end. And then I like drank a lot of Prosecco. So targeting is super important. So it's trying to figure out who's interested in your product or service. So some of you on the call are probably old enough to remember when we did persona development, when we were creating things. So personas are great, but they're also really, like, I think, too precise. So in a lot of cases, people will say, meet Joe. Joe is 42. Joe hangs out at farmers markets and drives a truck. And he's got a wife named Sarah, and she stays at home with their 8-year-old. And we made it so detailed, right? When we were doing that persona development. And nowadays, I look at it more from a life stage perspective. So like, what life stage are they in? Because right now, I'm in my early 40s, but I have young kids. But I also know friends of mine that are in their early 40s who have kids that are already in university. I have some friends right now that are grandmas. You know, I think just life changes and it shifts. So I look at it now as like, what life stage are they in? Versus, you know, Joe and his truck. Like, let's look at things from a perspective of like general targeting. You know, where do they go? What do they do? Is location important? If it is, then make sure that your location is obviously in your targeting. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you're doing things nationally, but location is probably important. So the reason why there's a random shot of carrot cake there is because I was going to give you guys an example of, like, it's going to take more work to do this type of targeting, but it'll work better. So if you see an ad that says best tasting carrot cake, you'd be like, oh, cool, that sounds awesome. But if it said the best tasting carrot cake in the Comox Valley, I'd be more likely to click on it. Why? Because I love carrot cake. 2, because I know that it's close to me and I'd want to support someone that's local. So it's about also using that location term. If you're doing like something on employment, so Facebook will only let you run employment ads. You can't even change the age demographic, and you can't, the only thing that you can influence is location. Facebook has really strict instructions on this stuff. It's like, it's crazy. But so what I've done, because I did these, we just did a virtual job fair, is I targeted the areas. So it's like Kelowna, if you're looking for a job, right? As opposed to being like, this place is offering virtual job, you know, it's about also using that location because it does grab people's eyeballs. It makes them more interested in the information that you're sharing. And it'll make your keywords cost less. Why? Because I already taught you guys. It's a long tail key phrase when you add in more words. So lifestyle information doesn't matter. Sometimes you're like, oh, we want to talk to, you know, Joe goes to the farmer's market. Doesn't matter. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. One thing that I found is I work with a lot of Indigenous companies. And I try quite a bit to put in like Indigenous rights or sustainability and those types of keywords to get less racist. It's just the reality. So think about it from a perspective of like, maybe it's not the lifestyle information, but maybe it's like what these people would be interested in that would be more likely to like it, as opposed to saying Joe goes to a farmer's market. And then considerations. If there's a global pandemic, be smart. You know, when we were targeting for traveling, I could have just sprayed out a national ad, and then what would have happened? We would have gotten slammed about it because people weren't traveling. And you could just imagine, I could imagine the comments that would have come out on that. I actually have a slide on this. But yeah, think about it. Think about how you're targeting and how that's going to be perceived to people, especially right now. And then think about who knows your product and services already. Should give you an idea of how your targeting can work. So here's some tips and tricks. If you're going to be working on Facebook ads a lot, set up your Facebook account verification right now. Like, get off this call and go and get verified. It'll allow you to post. It'll allow you to post ads on employment, housing, social issues, politics. So this is something new from Facebook that some of you guys might have seen. I believe, because Facebook doesn't give you lots of information, but I believe that this happened due to the US election, and so many people saying that it was influenced by Russian bots and all this kind of stuff. So now you have to send in your driver's license, photographs of your driver's license, and then they snail mail you a postcard to verify you. So you put the code in after. But even if you're not working this on this right now, but you intend to, the process will take 2 or 3 weeks. So if you do it now, and then the client asks you to help with this, then you're covered. And then set up a Facebook pixel for your pages too. Make sure that that's set up for your advertising, so at least you can get more data into your website.
Talk about, Jen, as an example about the account verification. I was setting up, I did a Facebook post about Gordjans because he visited our company, and the post went great. It had tons of shares and likes and everything else. And so I wanted to boost it, and I couldn't, because boosting a post is considered an ad. My account wasn't verified, so I couldn't boost the one post that had the most success over the whole year.
Yep. It's true. So it's smart to get it verified. Even if you don't intend on using it anytime soon, just get it verified. And then it's easier in a situation like that, because, you know, it sounds kind of, and it's hard to explain from a customer or a client standpoint too, because you're like, I'm sorry, I can't post it. I'm not verified. And they're like, well, but we posted it. So why can't you? It's easier to just get it done. All right, so I usually start with broad targets and refine. So I'll go for a bigger kind of net and then start refining it down as I go, as opposed to being really defined and then broadening it out, because I can get more data in the beginning and then I pare it down, as opposed to the other way. I actually start with more budget traditionally in the beginning too. So I'll spend more money in the first 3 or 4 days to get my data, and then I'll slow it down, just because I really want to do everything from the data specific focus in the beginning. If you're running with Google Ads, make sure you know where your ads are running. So if you guys have Google Ads running right now, when you get off this call, write this down for yourself. Make sure that you go into your settings and you're not showing it on 18+ or sensitive sites or sensational sites. If you don't go into your settings, your ads will be shown on porn sites, murders, even worse, politics. Yep, you can come up in an accidental political site, your ads can show, and then it will take some of that trust factor away. So that's one thing that you have to make sure that you do on all of your Google ads when you start creating campaigns, is check where they'll be running. We talked about this before. If your cost per click is too high, check your conversion path. And then again, don't promise what you can't actually do. So here's a list of the things that you can post or you can boost or advertise if you have the account verification. Social issues, anything with income, elections, political, employment, housing. But if someone comes to you and says, I only want this specific type of user to come, and it's based on someone's like ethnicity or specific demographic, you can't do that. And actually Facebook won't allow you. So the same thing is with my my virtual job fair one. Because it's a job, they won't even let you select anything outside of location. So don't promise anyone that you can target people that you can't. Know that in advance, or what I usually do is say, this sounds awesome, I'm gonna take this away and do some research. So make sure you can do these things before you say yes to something. I hope that makes sense. So you need a strategy before you set up ads. Know your business and marketing objectives. We talked about that. Understand your goals, measurement, and timeline. Know your ideal customer. Do your research. Brainstorm and have fun. So a part of like creating these ads should be that you're having fun. If you're not, and there's nothing wrong, like when I go into these, I'll go at it from different tones, different perspectives. Some of them have jokes, some of them don't. Some of them are more serious, some of them have more academic level type headlines. Like, test it all. Even if they tell you, because every client, and Claire will laugh, every client will tell you that their tone is friendly and professional. And that's actually become like a drinking game around here. Almost anytime someone says friendly and professional, we're like, oh man, like what does that actually mean? But you should be able to assess if someone has a bit of a higher risk tolerance on that, or what that actually means. So I've written ads for like laser removal, laser tattoo removal. And you know, one of them was like, when it just doesn't work out, or when you need a real job. And it was like, we were writing these and we were howling with laughter. But they had one of the highest click-through rates I've ever seen on ads. And it was just because it was disruptive, it was funny, and who knows, maybe the person that was looking at that was like, that's actually me, like, sorry, Pam, or whatever. You know, they have to go get their tattoo removed. So it was, and the company let us have fun with it. And you can ask them, like, can we have fun with this? Can we come up with things? Can we, you know, another really silly campaign was one of our clients ended up getting a huge following because Miley Cyrus stayed at their resort. And I was like, man, if you had a campaign at the end and it was like a bear on a wrecking ball and it was like, came in like a wrecking ball. It was like on reels or something and had video, and just taking this campaign to a whole nother level because they do bear tours. But I was like, come on, let's have fun with this, as opposed to just being, you know, boring and complacent. Part of having ads is having fun. If you're not having fun, I think you're doing it wrong.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you here from Rick.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's about how do you actually price your services when you're charging clients? Do you actually break down your costs, or?
No, no, I never do. I know how much time and effort it's going to take for our team to work on campaigns and to set up ads, and then the one thing that can change is the ad spend. So sometimes, like mostly I'll start with asking them what their budget is for that. Like I'll tell them how much our costs are. And in a lot of cases, the spend is actually less than my costs, but that's okay. It should actually be that someone smart is working on it and you get a higher return from a lower budget than the other way around. But I never break down exactly my time or anything like that. It just could be like the years of expertise. I don't know how many people on the call do, but I try to stay away from that stuff because, to be honest, I put a ton more work, or my team puts a ton more work in the beginning. And then by the time we're at month 3, they should be doing a pretty good job. And we're just maintaining and making sure and adapting as we go. But there's less effort in month 3 than there is in month 1. Does that mean that I need to charge less in month 3? I don't think so. I think it should just even itself out. So I usually just do a flat rate over like a 6-month time, and I explain that you're going to hear from us more, we're going to work on more things, there's more adaptation in the beginning, And then again, it's never going to be set and forget it, but you know, it ends up being a little, you know, we don't put as many hours in month 4 as we did in month 1, and that's okay. Like, that's where we're getting our analysis and stuff. And also with 20 years of experience, well, I think it's 13 years of experience, or 14 specifically doing this. My 10 minutes is worth more than someone else's 3 hours, very likely. So to me, it's about amount of effort and value versus actual billable hours. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And also you're reporting back on all your achievements.
Yeah.
So the math adds up regardless.
Yeah, I usually report out once a week. So I'll give an overview of what's happening once a week, especially in the beginning. And then it ends up being like once a month afterwards. And it always ties back to goals. Very, very transparent on what we're working on and what's working, and like if we need to adapt. So, and the big piece on here is get a second set of eyes on everything. So, so many fails in ads, so many fails, you guys. Just have someone else look at it. Even if you're an entrepreneur, get a friend to look at it. If you're writing ads for Indigenous folks, have someone else look at it. Like, it's to me, it's common sense that you'd have someone else to look at these things, especially from a sensitivity place, depending on who you're working with. But, you know, say you work with a yacht charter company and, you know, you use the wrong word on something, someone that's reading that ad and takes a look at it and they're like, that's hilarious. No one would ever do this. Or think about you guys looking at job descriptions and stuff, and they're like, you have to have 15 years of Oracle 5 or something. And then someone's like, that's only been around for 2 years. What a stupid ad. And you lose credibility. So always have someone else take a look at it, especially if it's not your core skill. So figure out what happens when someone clicks on your ads, the landing page, app download, sign up for event. One thing that's worked really well, especially on Facebook ads, is they have a form built right in, same with Instagram, and you can get people to fill out that form versus going to your website. So if it's you're like signing up for a webinar, like an event, or they want more information about a camping site, like, do they really need to go to your landing page, or will they just fill out this form in Facebook? Pretty freaking cool, because Facebook's Facebook, they remember your info. So I did this a couple of days ago with someone, and it had my name, it had everything. All I had to do was click once, and all of my information got sent off to the advertiser. It looks easy peasy from their end. So that works extremely well. And then remember, like, what's the one thing you want them to do when they click? Don't give them too many options. A lot of those sites were asking for email and then showing you the product. You know, they might test that that works, or maybe it doesn't work. I don't feel great about giving my email to a company before I even take a look at a product. So that doesn't work for me, but I'm sure they've tested enough that it works for someone. But if it's going to be invasive, like remember that one with the shoe company and it took up like the whole page and there was like things were moving and shit, that would never work on me. I'm not. So I would test all of that. I would test your assumptions going in to see if that works. Yeah, make it simple and easy. Find the path of least resistance. So lots of times they'll say, is there a secondary goal? So if their primary goal to sell that espresso machine was to sell the espresso machine, they could have put that pop-up maybe 30 seconds in or 40 seconds into me taking a look at it that said something like looking for more information or want a comparison between like something of value, or can we send you a spec sheet on this specific model? I would have given my email. So think about that from that perspective. And make sure you can attribute it back, which we've talked about a lot. Do you have remarketing or retargeting? So I'll see, I just clicked on those 2 ads, what happens after. But as a part of like homework for you guys, go in and just like click on every Facebook ad that comes up, click on every Google ad that comes up for a little bit and see what type of remarketing and retargeting you get again. Because sometimes the best way to go about that yourself is to view what people do wrong and what people do right.
Jen?
Yeah.
Haley's asking, earlier on you were talking about, Tone, about how clients always say, oh, we want to be friendly. Or like they say to designers, we want a clean website. What kind of thing could you ask? What is actually helpful description besides friendly and professional? What questions should you be asking the client? Also, you mentioned risk level. Is there anything else you should ask the client before you get working on their ad campaign?
Yeah, I think a risk level just tells you if you can have fun or not. I would just throw out campaign ideas when you're sitting there talking to them. If you can come up with concepts really fast, like the one with like the bear on the wrecking ball, as soon as they said Miley Cyrus, I was like, wait, what if we did this? And then they're like laughing hysterically, and we didn't, like, it might be something I end up doing down the road, but it's like seeing if, is that too much? Is this too much? Can I say, you know, when things with Sally just don't work out in a tattoo ad, can I say this is gonna hurt, but so does your lack of job options? Like, who knows, right? You just like, you can test the waters or see if they've already worked with something. You can also get a pretty good gauge based on the copy of their existing website, if they have one, or who they are as people. I use super, and I've done tests, I test everything, you guys. Sometimes I'll test like ads with super flowery language. Like I use those words like fantastic, stupendous, amazing. And then I'll test that versus just like best in class, you know, or like those types of words. So I would tell my clients that I'm going to test all of those different things out as opposed to really getting their feedback on it. If concepts are like way different, then I would get their buy-in in it. But I would just tell them, look, I'm going to write 12 different ads just in the beginning. They're all going to have different tones. They're all going to have different ideas, different headlines, different kind of concepts in them. And then I'll let you know what that looks like when we're done at the end and what works. And I'll test their words and stuff on there too. But if a company is like, and I've worked with some too, there are some industries that this is not going to work. Those are traditionally ones that have like compliance type issues that people have to be really thoughtful about, like wealth managers and that kind of stuff, or insurance companies. Sometimes certain like bank or financial institutions have specific things they can and can't do. So you just have to watch things like free and that kind of stuff. So you just want to see if that's a part of that risk tolerance too. Like, is there a governing body that has to look at these before? But to me, if there is, that's not fun. I wouldn't usually start on those ads, but that's just me. I hope I answered your question. Okay. So deciding what platforms to use, so Insta, Snap, Tik, Twit, Link, Google Face, there's lots. Also ones that I don't have on here are Etsy, which in itself is its own mini Google and e-commerce system. Same with Amazon. I've worked on both of those platforms as well. So I didn't include those ones, but these are the ones that you would mostly use. So I could add context into Google Ads, but that number is huge with how many people actually use and click on Google all the time with the complex. So I didn't add that. But it is robust, but it is complex. So if you're going to go into that, you need to make sure that you have some training on that, or an idea of what you're going to work on, or a strategy. Facebook still has 1.8 billion daily active users. So someone will say, oh, Facebook is dead, Instagram's this, or let's only use TikTok. Well, that's cool, but remember, Facebook is still everyone's kind of bread and butter, especially when it comes to advertising. Instagram, so we know that Facebook feeds into Instagram. You can boost in Instagram. I've read that it does help with getting an account verified, which is actually really a hard job to do on Instagram. Twitter is a bit of a dumpster fire, so I'd be thoughtful about using that one for ads, but it can work well. It has a higher, it has a higher age demographic and more male, but unless you're like Wendy's, who seems to just know how to do Twitter like no one's business, I would probably say that that's not the best place to start. Snapchat is pretty cool too. It does reach a younger demographic. LinkedIn, they have 3 million weekly active users. So you can see that that's different than the daily active users. But here's where LinkedIn is really cool. It's business to business. So you could say, okay, instead of going at it from a consumer standpoint, you can say, here's my hit list of all of these companies that I want to get in front of. Yeah, so you could say, okay, my target market is car salesmen. I don't know why, but sure. Car salesmen in Vancouver. And you'd be able to use LinkedIn to only talk to car salesmen in Vancouver. You could say, I only want to talk to people at Coca-Cola, and they would only show your ads there. So it's a really strategic, cool way for B2B, but it does nothing from a consumer standpoint, and it's got a really low amount of impressions. But the people who click in, it's so targeted that they would be really worth the click. So it's a higher cost per click with lower impressions. One cool thing on here is TikTok. So people are starting to take a look at TikTok from a paid perspective. Right now, it's super crazy expensive. It's about $50 US a day to run advertising on. And you have to, of course, do it right because there's complexities to TikTok and different algorithms. But I think based on these numbers and kind of where it's going, and it's the only one on here really truly outside of Google where you can get it in front of an Asian market. So because you can't on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, well, for the most part, anyway, another thing I could talk about for 150 years, but let's just say that TikTok is a pretty cool way to get in front of people, especially if you're looking for a younger demographic. So these are things that I consider when going in and taking a look at ads. Facebook is cumbersome. It changes all the time. It's not my favorite. I do like Instagram a lot. I think the Instagram shopping ads that they've come up with are really kick-ass, and that's a great opportunity for people. But I think, and don't mark my words on this, but I think probably the next big thing is going to be figuring out how to use TikTok in a really smart way. I'm sure people have questions about this stuff. Let me know if they do. So figure out who you're targeting, how big your budget is. Again, TikTok starts at $50 US a day. Right now, anyway, I think they're just testing things out. If you're looking for, if you have a smaller budget, you might want to, do Google, potentially Facebook. So a couple of things here too, with who you're targeting. If you're targeting, Google is the place to target reactive products and services. Your house has mold in it. You're not going to go to Facebook and be like, oh yeah, cool, mold remediation Facebook. It's not going to happen. Or you're not going to be scrolling through Facebook and be like, oh shit, I forgot about that mold that's hanging out in the wall over there. Like, this isn't something that is like a proactive thing. You can say, oh, there's awareness. If we put out these ads, then people will know when they get mold to contact me. But like, how sexy is a mold ad? Not. So it's the idea of like, if you have that, I would put my money into Google. Why? Because people are going to put mold, how to remove mold from my home. Mold remediation in Comox Valley. Yes, beautiful, Google. No one cares about your mold company in Facebook. I'm sorry. I don't think they do. They can test it, but I'm going to assume they don't. So Google, again, it's more for reactive, meaning something happened, I'm going to look. And then Facebook is better. Facebook and the rest of them are better for proactive, meaning like, I didn't know this existed, but now I need this pee stick thingy. How cool is this, right? But you weren't like, I need a pee stick thingy to test my pH levels. Like I didn't Google that, but it came up in Facebook and I was like, this looks pretty cool. And I purchased it. And then you guys just saw the remarketing. How long is the duration? That'll change too. So if you have a short period of time, you might want to throw money at everything and see what works. Keyword research. So I want to touch on this. It can get really detailed, so I'm going to try to give a high level of it. But we talked about short tail versus long tail. Let's talk about positive versus negative. Positive is what I use in my language because it's really just keywords or negatives. But when I'm teaching people, it's easier to say positives and negatives because then you can see the parallel between the two. So in positive keyword research would be mold removal in Comox Valley. Be like, okay, I'm also going to put mold removal, which is a short tail key phrase. But then your ads run for a little bit and you realize someone clicked on your ad that looked for popsicle mold. How to get like mold out of a popsicle. What are those things? Popsicle mold. Yeah. How to get mold out of a popsicle mold. Or like how to get mold out of the Bible. Like, who searches for this shit? I don't know. People do. They click on my ads. And they're like, yeah, I need mold removal for my popsicle mold. So then in a negative keyword, I added the word popsicle. In a negative keyword, I added the word Bible. It's ridiculous, but you don't really know. Like, people search for the weirdest stuff. So you have a negative keyword list, meaning don't show my ads when this comes up. And then you have a positive keyword list, which is please show my ads when this shows up. So you want to pay attention to both sides. And then if you Google, there's probably like hundreds of great lists of the top 50 negative keyword use lists, like free, unless you actually have something free, because or Craigslist, or those types of things. There's typically negative keywords that you would put in. But then there's also ones that you wouldn't have considered because you can only know so much this in advance, right? Like, we do a lot of bear tours, and there's like some huge band in Europe called like Bear Hands or something. And then I was like, why are people so interested in bear hands? And then I Googled it and I was like, oh man, they're not. This is a band. So why are they clicking on my ads? I don't know. But I don't want them to show when someone looks for bare hands, right? So it's paying attention to the positives and negatives. So if you're going to do a Google campaign, you want to walk into this with at least what we consider a seed list, or the beginning of a keyword list that you can add on to as you go. Google Ads does have a keyword tool built right into it, which is helpful. That will be able to help you with your positive and your negatives. And then we use a tool internally called SEMrush that I really like. If you guys want to check that out, they have like a free trial too. But again, Google Ads is much more complex. But if you have this keyword research, even if you're doing a Facebook ad or any other type of ad, it will at least give you the words to use. So I'm just trying to think. I worked on a campaign with this, actually this website just got brought back up, but the company makes personalized dishes for kids. So they're really cute. They're like plates and bowls with like your kid's face on it, but they're like cartoony, like little freckles and stuff. They're actually the cutest thing you've ever seen. And the lady, who's one of my friends, asked me for help with her business, and she's like, I need to sell more, I don't understand. So we're going through and I'm taking a look, and the keyword that she's going after is personalized plates. Anyone have an idea of what people are actually looking for personalized plates? License plates. So what's the likelihood that anyone's gonna click on her ad? Or
I just have to mention, Diane reckons people are looking for dentures.
Maybe, right? But it's definitely not what she was selling. So we had to take, and she's like, but that's what it is. They're personalized plates. And I was like, yes, but let's Google it. So we like put it into Google. Always do this. Always Google the intention of your keyword. Put it into Google, and up comes just millions of pages of people talking about license plates and personalized license plates. So then we ended up doing, okay, well, maybe it's like, so we did some more keyword research, and it ended up that she changed it to like best personalized gifts for kids, coolest gifts for kids. Some of her ads talked about like finally get your kid something that will use their unique name, right? Like I have a Tennessee and an Azalea. That's not showing up on a pencil anywhere, right? Like, so for me, if I saw that and I was like, oh, cool, look at this. It's a personalized gift for my kid. This is super cute. I click in, take a look at these awesome plates, have fun making these characters of my kids. But no one in Google is looking for a kid's plate when they're looking for personalized plates. So do make sure you know the intention behind and do that keyword research before you get started on these for sure.
Jen, we have a question from Danica. What would be a good starting point, a good starting budget for running Google ads? So she's working with restaurants, with small food related businesses, and she heard that $300 is a good minimum to start with.
Oh, what's the duration, Tanika?
I don't know. Danica, if you're there, you can take the microphone.
Hey, Jen. That was what I thought was a monthly minimum. So, and this is it. I've hired an expert, and I was just told unless a client has $300 minimum to work with a month to run Google Ads, there's no point in doing it. So I just wondered, is that true or false?
That's a hard question to say yes or no to. I guess I would need to know like who they're targeting and like what type of areas and that kind of stuff. If it's very, very targeted in a small demographic area, like for example, if it was
like, for example, best brunch in Comox Valley.
Oh yeah, then $300 you're good.
But nothing less than that.
Well, you could. It depends on how many people are looking for that. And also, like, are you going to do image ads? Is it just search ads? Do you want to do any type of remarketing? Like, if you want to do something more robust, I wouldn't go under like 500. If you're only doing search ads and they're reactive, I would say 300 is probably okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Jade, on the same topic, is asking, are short duration campaigns effective in Google Ads?
They can be, yeah. It depends on, I mean, it is a place where you'd see more long-term, so Jade's right. Jade's smart. I like Jade. So it is more, I would use that one more for long-term, but it doesn't mean that I haven't done campaigns with just a couple of, over a couple of weeks and sent people to a landing page. So sometimes it's about content, like getting your eyeballs in front of content. So in that example, where I showed you guys the Escape from Home campaign that I worked on, that one had Google Ads. The duration of that was 7 weeks, which in the campaign world is fairly short, but we could have done it over 3 weeks. I've done campaigns in Google for a week when we just needed to really just hammer in ads to get people to fill in spots at a resort. So yeah, we just put way more budget into a short period of time, but it can absolutely work. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So my joke is to write drunk and edit sober, but it wasn't a joke when I was in my 20s and got started in this stuff. So start with your keyword research. You want a disruption. So that's the key, is disruption. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative word. It's not. It's a disrupting someone from their doom scrolling. It's disrupting someone from like going to the next page in Google. It's just something that grabs attention, right? So it's just like, how do you disrupt the right person at the right time? And then write with a goal of relief. It's interesting, people are always like, people want one of 3 things, right? They want to save time, save money, spend more time with their families. Truly, it rolls into one thing. People want relief. Relief. If you think about that. And so what does that look like for each person? And then how do you write that back? So sometimes it'll be about, some people will write about like the negative effects of something to give people like a feeling of like, I don't want that. Like, could you imagine if someone wrote like an ad, we were just talking about mold remediation, but they're like, mold is growing in your home faster than you think. I'd be like, gross. And that would be disruption, probably not in a good way, right? But if you write an ad and you know someone has mold in their home, You write an ad that says, we'll take care of everything, right? We'll take care of everything. We got this. You can trust us. We've done this over 6,000 times. Like, just that feeling of we got you, I would click on that and be like, oh my goodness, thank you, right? Because I don't want to keep scrolling. I don't want to keep trying to figure out how to do this myself. In fact, that would be a very anxiety-ridden thing to be feeling at that time. So you don't want to like spew it back with like, this is the worst doomsday content. You want to give them relief, right? So if it was example of that pea stick, which is hilarious, I keep referring it to that, but maybe it's just like constantly feeling, you know, tired of feeling constantly under the weather. It's okay. We'll give you some ideas of things that you can do for your diet and health to feel better, right? So it's about relief. Yeah. I don't know if people have questions about this stuff. All kinds of copy, I talked about this, different tones, different words, different images, different intentions. Test out your landing pages, like test out everything. I think a part of the fun is just being really thoughtful about things. There's nothing wrong with emojis. There's nothing wrong with internet slang. I've definitely wrote like, one of the TikTok things that was happening was like in the beginning of the pandemic, if anyone's on TikTok, was a little like bored in the house, I'm in the house bored. You guys remember that? And then it was like the song with that. So I've definitely written ads during the pandemic that were like tired of being in the house bored, and then whatever it is that they could do. So like have some fun. But if your target market is a plus 50, they wouldn't get that. And it sounds dumb. So you wouldn't want that content. So it's perfectly fine to create different ads and to create different ad campaigns and to target differently. I don't really like emojis in when I see ads and stuff come up, but I'm also like at the end of like, at the end of Gen X or something. But I know that my kids would. So think about who you're targeting. And there's nothing wrong with testing things either. And then write platform specific ads. It's super lazy to write the same ad in Google, the same ad in Facebook, and the same ad in Instagram. I don't want to see it. Don't be lazy, you guys. I used to do a presentation called Lazy Marketing Kills Kittens, and it was like one of my most popular presentations. It was exactly on that. Don't be lazy. Take your time and write things, do things the right way. Spend the time in the beginning to figure all of this stuff out. And then test your assumptions. I could say, I don't like emojis on things. And then I'll test it and I'll be like, but the people like emojis? I'm okay with being wrong. So you just want to test that out and test your client's assumptions. They'll always say that something will work. Almost always. They'll be like, this will work. And you'll say, awesome, let's test that. And then they're really intrigued and it's part of the process because they know that you're going to like test that assumption. It's pretty cool. Get them involved. A landing page content should match the ad. If you're going from an ad that's a specific image, try to recreate it on your landing page or make it look really close together. Otherwise, if it feels mismatched, people won't tell you because they don't know how to use the word, but they lose trust. So carry the images, carry the branding, carry the tone. Give the visitor one thing to do again. And then think back to the why someone wouldn't want to buy it and then build the trust through it. So an example of this would be, maybe we go back to mold. I don't know why this is like a constant in our presentation, Claire. I thought we got rid of mold. Anyway,
altogether.
I know. But so it's like, think about why someone wouldn't use it. Okay, well then maybe they won't use it because they're scared of someone coming into their home. So then maybe your ad says that they're fully bondable. Maybe I don't want to hire the wrong person. What if they come in and destroy things? Then you say, we've done this 6,000 times, right? Think about all the reasons why someone doesn't want to buy your product and then give them trust by talking about that, by using the terms that relief term that would come from that, right? I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to think of another example. If someone throws out an example, I can probably give you some ideas, but that's the one that I have. Yeah, build more than one landing page. And if your website sucks, use an external landing page creator. These are pretty easy. Most of them are drag and drop. We use lead pages, which works pretty well. And it'll actually, there's a widget between WordPress and lead pages, which will spoof the domain so it looks like it's still on your website. Costs maybe $1,000 a year, I think, which sounds like a lot, but we can have quite a few different clients on it. But it's the idea of like, don't use it as an excuse. Like, we're not going to do this because our website sucks. Okay, don't. Try a landing page. And even if your website is great, try a landing page. There's nothing wrong with trying out new things and seeing if you get higher conversions.
Jen, we have a question from Wendy. How do you feel about executing successful marketing campaigns for self-owned retail store with limited time? Or is it better to hire a company to get you going for at least 6 months? Wendy, do you feel comfortable asking this question yourself? Can you turn your microphone on?
Yep.
Great.
I can.
Right. So I'm not sure I completely understood what you're asking.
Well, just as like so far during the presentation, I'm just wondering like, how can I bring this home for my own self and my own business? And seems like a lot, like, is this really possible to do as a single owner?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. Yes and no. I mean, if it's a priority to you, like, I'm also a small business owner. If it's a priority to you, then do it. If it seems like it's not worth your time, then push it off. Like, for example, I work a lot. It's just life. So this is going to sound terrible, but maybe it doesn't. But I outsourced my gardening because it doesn't bring me joy, and it's not necessarily worth my time. Like, I can do other things instead of doing my gardening. Do you know what I mean? So if you look at it from a perspective of, does this bring me joy? Is it something that I want to do? Is it something I want to learn? Does it seem like it's something cool and interesting that I can test out? Then absolutely do it. If it gives you anxiety, or you worry about, not doing it right, or setting up things wrong, or really there's no right or wrong, you just won't have a super successful campaign, right? But you can shut it off if it doesn't work. So it's going to be up to you and your time and where you want to spend it. But as a business owner, doing ads, like we talked about before, like just figuring out like what headlines work, what copy works, how you can translate it into your website, it should become part of your overarching marketing strategy. And if that's
it just seems like something that would be nice to get started in the right foot, so you're not spinning wheels.
Yeah.
With a professional.
Yeah, and then if you work with someone that is professional, make sure from in the beginning that they're working in it within your account. So you never want to have someone creating these ads on their own account and sharing it out. You want to make sure that you have the keys to all of this at the end. That's so important. So then if you decide that you're going to do like a 3 or 4 month to get this started and to get someone else working on it, that at the end you feel confident that you can walk away with it. They're not going to shut off your things. Like, it's still your property. So if you feel confident, then and they can guarantee that it's your data and that they're setting it up using your accounts, then I would say, yeah, if you have the time and the budget, or because it does take time, even though you're outsourcing it, it's still an awful lot of time to manage that relationship too. But yeah, it's one way of doing it. It's a good way if you have the budget to do it, because then you'd have a lot of data come in, but pay attention to it as it's happening to you, because it should be a good part of your marketing strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helped. Now I know what, now I'm like, what does she do? I want to do all the things. If you reach out to me, I'll give you some ideas for free, even though I shouldn't tell you that. Okay. Pick your images and video. So you never know what someone's going to click on, so try all the things. Test images versus carousel, test videos, test it all. You may think that something works, or you might read that something works better. It may or may not with yours. People like to click on human faces and cute animals. It's just the way it is. They just do. So if you can include them, do it. Think about image sizes on different platforms. So for example, sometimes I'm on Facebook and I have a giant screen in front of me. If you're using a low res image, it's gonna look like garbage. So think about it from all aspects, including what it'll look like if it's small. Words on images used to be like the coolest thing. Everyone like put words on top of their images in their ads and they're like, save 20%, you know, or like they have all this, like we just piled like text on top of images. Doesn't seem to be the way it's working anymore. Test it if you feel like it. Google used to, or Facebook used to have a thing that said you can't have over 20% text over images. They actually took that away. They just didn't tell anyone. But yeah, it doesn't seem to work as well. But I don't know, test it out. Little thing about videos. So test 15 and 30-second videos. Those are pretty much your sweet spot. Watch your resolution again if they're going to look at it a big screen versus a small screen. Always, always, always have closed captioning. I've already told you guys about that. If there's music in your video, you got to make sure that it's open source, meaning that it's free and you're available to use it, or it's original, or it'll get flagged and it won't even go. So the best converting videos bring in like emotion quick, and they leave you wanting more. So it's intentionally short and sweet. Don't do your whole pitch in 30 seconds. Give a question, be compelling. You know, talk about one of those like statements, talk about how you're going to bring relief to the person on the other side, and then hook them and then get them to go in. So don't give it all away in your 15 or 30 seconds. So here's a section on testing assumptions. So these images and A/B testing, so I used these images in a contest that we were doing for Quality Labs Hotel, which is in Port Hardy, which is beautiful. You should all go there. The contest was to get a flight in from Vancouver, because one of our goals actually was to bring awareness of the hotel to people that were in the mainland, lower mainland. And it is an Indigenous owned and operated hotel, so we wanted to bring in some of that imagery as well. And they had just opened up tours, which are super cool, like that drum. They have a drum making tour. I'm not sure if it's running right now, but anyway, very cool aspects. So we decided to put together this contest. One, because we knew we'd get more eyeballs in an area that they really wanted to check out if they had a new audience. Two, the landing page and the way that you entered was to give your email, so that it created them a brand new email list they could use to promote the hotel and some of the events that they were doing going forward. And the cost of it was over the cost of the trip, like what you could win was over $900. So to me, it felt like, yeah, that's a justification for an email. Like $900, sign me up. So these are some of the images that we used on our ads. They're beautiful, right? So here's a question. Maybe you guys throw it into chat. Which one, A to F, got the highest amount of clicks? What are they saying?
They don't, what? They're all saying E, the otter. Oh no, someone says the drum. E. E.
It is. Because I told you guys that they click on the baby animal. I don't know what it is, but people love animals. If you can ever put animals or kids or anything like that into your ads, we have one campground that we work with. The #1 photo that gets clicked on is like these kids sitting on a log around a campfire eating s'mores. And it always gets clicked on, and it makes me want to go hang out and hug those kids. But it works even better than taking a look at a beautiful marina. It works even better than taking a look at, like, it was just the idea that you could like be there with your kids, eating these s'mores, enjoying these laughs, sitting on logs, hanging out, you know, it's just, it works. So I personally assumed that people would be interested in like C, probably F, and then I was not surprised at the otter. But that's just it. You go in with assumptions and you figure out, like, a lot of times they don't work.
It's always about emotion.
I'm sorry?
It's always about emotion at the end of the day.
Yeah, true. So campaign reporting, I'm running out of time a little bit, but
We probably speed things up a little bit. But.
Yeah. So, I lost this. So always go back to your goals and benchmarks. Provide simple weekly reporting. And then at the end, compile detailed reporting. Why? Because at some point you'll have done so many campaigns and you'll be like, oh, shoot, remember we did this one campaign and what came out of that? And you'll want this one place to have your benchmark and to have your own data. And plus, most clients won't really understand these numbers. So for example, I'll show you guys. So this is a example of like a report that I send my clients that I put together for a campaign. And most clients will just look at this and they're just bewildered. They're like, whatever. And then I write a thing that says, this is awesome. And this is why, or this is what we see as a trend. And here's what we're going to change. But the reason why I like doing it this way is because A, it shows that we have goals and it ties back to them, which is really important here too. B, it shows me what it's looking like per platform. So I know where to spend my budget. So if we're seeing that there's more conversions in Instagram than Facebook, then I would make that switch in budget, right? So it's also analyzing it from a budget standpoint. I can see how things did week by week by week. I know specifically that each one of these weeks had different images, different areas that we were targeting. So I can definitively say, wow, week one, when we kicked this off, we had so many clicks. And we can probably say that happened because people were like, what is this? This is really cool. And, it had a little bit of like extra emphasis behind it because it was brand new. And then we can say, okay, it started like week 2 was a little bit weak, week 3 really picked up, and then we can do a comparison of the creative versus those weeks too. So this takes work. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. This takes more time than you will ever think it does. So if you put there, like I'm probably, this took about 2 or 3 hours a week for me to compile, plus more to send it to a client. So this aspect is one that doesn't always get picked up because it's cumbersome and manual. So some of you might end up using systems where you can compile some of this data together. We use a social media one internally called Sprout Social that will compile some of this social data for us. But Google Ads, I still had to take out manually. I still had to roll things up manually. So it's not fun unless you're a nerd like me and you really like numbers, but it's super important because at the end you can say, this is how we did, and you can take a look back at it because now this is going to create the benchmark for my next big campaign with them, and maybe even internally because I know what success came out of it. So this next part is this is one of the last slides here, but here's some important things to consider that I want you guys to ask yourself when you're putting together this stuff. Can your ads do better? Always ask yourself if your ads can do better. If you're constantly striving for, not necessarily perfection, but you're constantly striving for that low cost per click and your high click-through rates, it'll keep you on your toes, which I think is good. You don't have, and ad platforms change all the time, you guys, all the time. Like I didn't even know that they added forums into Facebook. It's not like anyone like sends you, alerts you and they're like, hey Jen, try this new thing. It's just, they come out and you just, I'm like, my mind's constantly blown about new stuff that's happening. So I try to pay attention. I try to follow the industry blogs. I'll check out, if Apple's having the next big thing on their technology. I'll try to figure out how that works back into our world. Google has tons of conferences and stuff that they do online, so I try to take part in those. Yeah. Okay, so this is so important. I shouldn't even have to say this, guys, but like, if something happens in your current events, turn off your ads. If something big happens, turn off your ads. So an example of this is after they shut down the border, there was a really big US company that kept putting their ads out. And they were talking about like, come to Mexico. It's like, what? And they weren't paying attention because not only did this happen for weeks, but there were thousands of comments, you guys, thousands of negative comments on these ads. And no, like they just weren't paying attention. No one shut it off. So if something like this happens, like, or, you know, an explosion happens, something happens politically, like think about it, take a step back and go, will this influence any of my ads? Will this look insensitive if my ads stay up? You know, it's just, it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
And if something big happens too, like, or it's small in the scheme of things, but there was a co-working space here in Courtenay and they had Twitter ads running. Well, they shut down and they're still running. It's been like 4 or 5 months. And I have emailed them, I sent them direct messages, I've replied comments, they're just not paying attention. So they're still paying for those ads, even though they're not even in business, they're not even paying attention. Oh my God.
Yeah, this ties into something that Amy and Sean are asking about. They're asking, how did you have to adapt for the pandemic? Because they both have, I believe they're both owners of travel companies.
I literally had to, I paused every single one of our ads for the first little bit to see what would happen, and adapted and changed 95% of them. Because I had to make sure that if my ads were going to go somewhere, even if it was a service, that there was something on that page that talks about what they were doing for personal safety for both their team and for their customers. Something like pee sticks, maybe it didn't, who cares? That there's no transaction between humans in that. It's just a pure product and service, right? But that mold remediation company better have something on their website that talks about what's going to happen if they come into your home. The tourism companies, we just shut it down until we felt like we could do it in a way that it was thoughtful, meaningful, and had the right types of disclaimers on it. So it changed everything. In fact, it's constantly changing everything. I've really had to keep on my toes because it felt like things were going to open up a little, especially in the tourism industry, and then no. And then they talk about it a little bit more. So it's like, right now, I'm just kind of like, every day, do I have to change this? Should I adapt this? And for the most part, people are just not advertising as much as they used to. So, and most of my clients, or most of our targeting, like I said before, especially in the tourism industry, we're like English-speaking Europeans. Definitely not targeting them anymore. And then had to make a whole new strategy of getting Canadians to come, hyper-local people to come instead. So it's changed everything. So another thing about commenting on your ads, so if you're working on ads for a company, there's a chance they won't always get notifications when someone comments on the, so these ads don't show in your newsfeed, right? My newsfeed, they won't show on my page. So they kind of are like in the background, which means that there's a blind spot. It creates a blind spot for comments. So a while ago, a huge destination marketing company tagged one of my clients in their ads and then didn't manage the comments. And within probably 3 weeks or so, there were hundreds and hundreds of racist and horrible comments. And people weren't noticing, and it was horrifying because it was just that blind spot. They were sitting in the background and no one was getting notified. So if you guys are putting these ads up, make sure that you're paying attention to the comments on them, or at least let the company know that they need to manage these comments. Like have that communication going back and forth and just really truly pay attention. It makes, you don't want those types of comments to be on your ads. And if you're getting lots of comments that are bad, take your ad down or reconsider writing it. Like, don't keep something up that's fueling people's anger. I don't know why you would. But. And then lastly, ads need time and energy, right? They need to be managed. They need adaptation. Please don't just set it and forget it. And if you have a fairly large budget and you're spewing out tons of ads, change them up too, because people become blind to ads. You see the same ad over and over again, you just don't see it anymore. So there are ways within these platforms to cap how many times someone sees an ad. So if you have a large budget, make sure that it's capped. Whew. Sorry guys, I feel like I just gave you guys like such a crash course on how to do ads, but yeah, I would probably give another 3 days of workshops and I would feel better about the amount that I gave, but hopefully you guys get some value out of that.
Jen, this is absolutely awesome. We are over time.
Yeah.
So we're just going to wrap it up now, but thank you so much for coming. The recording for this is going to be available. We're going to make it available on our social media, but we need to do a little bit of editing first. Also, Jen's making her presentation available for everyone to copy. Thank you, Jen. Where can people get your presentation? You've got it up here.
Yeah, updatecompany.com/Jen Talks Ads.
Perfect. So I don't know how you managed to summarize 20 years of experience in a couple of hours.
I don't think I did. I tried.
But yeah, some hugely valuable insights there. Thank you so much. And also I want to thank you everybody for joining us. I know this was absolutely invaluable for many of our students, and I can see there's lots of community members there too. So yeah, thank you for everybody. And we'll have another workshop coming up soon. We'll make the details available for that soon as well.